So in the beginning, says the book of Genesis, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was void and without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters. And then God said, let there be light. And there was light, and it was good, etc., etc., etc. And so goes the opening of one of the most organized and perhaps majestic creation narratives known to us. Now, God creates light. Light is so perennial to existence. What does he use to create light? Sound. Speech. Divine sound. He doesn't create sound. There is no level of the narrative whereby he perhaps thinks sound into being. Sound, shabda, is already there. We find an analog, a parallel to this wisdom, perhaps much more fleshed out in Indic myth, pertaining to the primacy of sound. I'm Dr. Raj Balkaran, the founder of the Indian Wisdom School, and today we will dive into the mythology of Sarasvati, this elusive, illustrious goddess who is a face of power. As all goddesses, she's a Shakti, the power of eloquence, artistry, and perhaps sound itself. So I will read an excerpt from the Stories Behind the Poses that was crafted by yours truly for Swan Pose, which somewhat parallels Genesis. In the beginning of time, the creator god Brahma looked out onto the primordial oceans. Again, we have this idea that the oceans are already there. The oceans being a profound symbol of depth, of fluidity, of creativity, of perhaps the unknown, of fecundity, of mystery, of the feminine. They're there. The Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters, says Genesis, and the waters are seemingly swayambhu, self-existent. They're already there. Similarly, we have brilliant mythic motifs involving the cosmic ocean, the ocean of milk. Okay, in Indic myth, but the creator god looked out over the primordial oceans, surveying the scene at the beginning of time. Wait a minute, but the beginning of time? No. We really have this wonderful and somewhat problematic tendency to think along linear terms. But can we really presume that the cosmos can fit within the scope of linear thought? Is that a sound assumption, presumption? Well, one way to view the cosmos through the lens of Indic myth is that consisting of cycles. Perhaps this is somewhat intuitive insofar as everything within the known universe seems to cycle on the atomic level, on the galactic level, on the seasonal level, cycles and cycles and cycles. Yes? Perhaps the cosmos itself does not serve as the ground of cycles, but perhaps it itself partakes in this cyclical reality. And so goes Indic thought, this reality constituted of endless cycles of creation, duration, cessation, creation, duration, cessation. Creation, preservation, destruction, but there is no real destruction. This apocalyptic idea, an ideal, is not truly to be found in Indic thought, because destruction is nothing more than transformation, because nothing truly ends and nothing truly begins, because the universe is anadi, it's beginningless, and it's ananta, it's endless. And this is a radically either profound or imaginative or creative vision of creation, of reality. And it cycles over and over and over, not to the point at which we cannot count. It is not innumerable insofar as we cannot track it. It is beyond number because it is truly boundless. It is the idea of boundlessness. The universe cannot be bound. We cannot know it. It cannot be an object of our thought and our intellectual categories. We cannot subjugate and subordinate the cosmic abyss to our impulse and means of knowledge, of thought. No, it is far too grand and too great, perhaps, for that. It is truly boundless, without beginning and end, and consisting of incessant cycles. So this is not the beginning of time. This is a beginning of time. Perhaps. At this beginning of time, the creator god Brahma looked out onto the primordial oceans, surveying the scene. At the end of the previous cycle of creation, all things had been dissolved into the ocean, the cosmic ocean, right? Potential of all things. They had been dissolved by Shiva. Shiva's blissful dance of destruction. What a profound concept that somehow bliss, the Anandamaya Kosha, so goes Indic thought, elements of Indic thought. The Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss body, is the most subtle of our five bodies. Our food body, our Annamaya Kosha. Our food body this is the body that's amenable to probing and prodding and medical science. This body we understand very well, perhaps never before as well as we do in these times in which we live, perhaps at the expense of understanding the mental body, the intellectual body, the energetic body, and the bliss body. That somehow bliss is innate, ananda, somehow being, somehow supreme being is implicated in existence and consciousness and bliss, such as ananda, somehow bliss being perennial, somehow the pursuit of truth, of the one, somehow spiritual seeking is tantamount to imbibing bliss. Perhaps. But anyhow, this is a glorious image of Shiva erupting in a blaze. This is a very elegant and artistic apocalypse indeed, Shiva erupting in his Ananda Tandava, his cosmic dance of destruction, inebriated in bliss, in order to reduce all things to the cosmic ocean from whence they emerged. And now Brahma is again tasked with bringing forth all things, or at least not all dishes, but all ingredients with which the dishes may be made, figuratively speaking, and maybe even literally speaking, because ingredients come from creation. And so he surveys a scene about to begin the cycle anew. By the power of his will, time and space unfurled before him, but he could not go further than that. The scaffolding of the universe was up, dimensions, as it were, at least the gross dimensions that we perceive. And yet, all there was empty space and empty time, nothing to fill it. He was sort of at a loss as to how to proceed. Perhaps, writer's block times a billion. Moments where the creative force is elusive, is evasive. So, what does he do? Brahma, the creator, takes a moment to himself. He turns inward, takes a deep breath, and expands his consciousness to receive what he could from the cosmic abyss. There's really profound idea that even the gods are subject to a meta-divine realm, a divine realm that's beyond even the gods. That which, we say fate, we call fate daiva, which comes from the gods in a certain sense. Perhaps fate does come from the gods, or fate is propagated by karma. But in a certain sense, even the gods are bound by fate. We see this idea in Greco-Roman myth as well, and in various places. This idea that the individual divinities, however wise, however powerful, however elevated, are nevertheless limited in their purview by the contours of their personality. Because of their specific personality and their specific ego sense, they have a particular perspective. And that sort of stands to reason, right? Can we stand in all places at once? We have this tension as well in Abrahamic mythology, where we see, being itself, I am that I am, being conflated or elided with a personage, with a particular devata or deity in the personage and the proclivities of Yahweh. We see this elision back and forth of a particular specific deity, uh, Indra's ancient Israelite cousin, perhaps in Yahweh. They're analogs in a certain sense. They are both what are they? Thunderbolt wielding masculine deities who govern heaven. We see a particular personality with particular agendas and relationship with a particular people, etc., etc. And then, of course, the Hebrew Bible, like all religious thought, as far as I've come across, has a sense of that, the beyond, the one, the source, the however, shunyata, the emptiness, purusha, the supreme personhood, the atman, supreme selfhood, you know. And so it's interesting that even the deities, when they're individuated form, they are not one with the one. So he takes a moment to close his eyes and connect with the cosmic expanse, right? The field of energy undergirding the cosmos. Every god has a role to play in the cosmic dance, but the scope of the cosmic consciousness that governs all things is mysterious, even to the gods, as Brahma meditates. Inspiration strikes. He opens his mouth, takes in another enormous, ground deep in breath, and he lets out a cosmic sound, the sound Om. There's much to be said about the theology of Om. That perhaps is a story for another day. Suffice it to say, it is a sound that is considered cosmic insofar as it is the human utterance that correlates to the cosmic white noise, if you will, subtle sound that pervades the cosmos. Okay. Sound is interesting in the Indic context because sound is understood not to pervade air, atmosphere, that which we can hear, but they really had an understanding of vibration pervading space, because sound is understood to pervade akasha, or space. It's related to the space element. It's really fascinating insights, actually. So he opens his mouth and he lets out a cosmic Om. The sacred syllable pervaded the very corners of the universe. At the end of his utterance, to his utter astonishment, a majestic four-armed feminine form was born of this very utterance. She was glistening, lovely to behold, milky white and shining like 1,000 suns. Great goddess, exclaimed Brahma. Who are you? And how did you manifest here before me? I haven't even created anything. All I've done is utter Om. Om, sweet Om, indeed. Well, Brahma, I am Sarasvati, divine inspiration. You prayed for inspiration, did you not? Ask and you shall receive. I exist beyond space. I exist beyond time, uncreated and undestroyed by the cycles of creation, duration, and cessation. I am that divine cosmic white noise of the cosmos itself. I am that pulse of potential. Yes. I manifest before you by virtue of your divine utterance, of which I am an embodiment. I am utterance itself. I am sacred sound. I am the sound with which you will create all things. And God said, let there be light indeed. Brahma was delighted to be so inspired by Sarasvati and glad to be able to proceed with the unfurling of the universe. The two embraced like peas in a cosmic pod, Brahma and Sarasvati, creator and creativity. They communed as one to create the cosmos. Inspired by Sarasvati, Brahma uttered a mantra, and then another, and then another, and then another. Mouthfuls of mantras. Yes, he utters with particular intentions and purposes to effect particular changes in the atmosphere. Yes. He utters mantras to create the galaxies, the stars, the planets. Even more subtle mantras are spoken to create the laws that govern creation itself. Right. So this was a divine coupling, if you will. The divine dance resulted in the birth of everything within the universe. When creation was in order to the communion of Brahmā and Sarasvatī, what did they do? They created certain beings, special beings, seers, rishis, those who have subtle sight, the capacity to see what is beyond the gross. There is certainly a subtle or multiple subtle realms, depending on how you think of it, subtle realities that are beyond the gross material reality which we adopt. Now, if one is foolishly going to look for material evidence of a transmaterial reality, good luck, more chance. But we can corroborate this experientially without question. Even through mundane human experience, we understand that we are more than the sum of our parts. We can experience that we are more than matter. It's a palpable experience to be had, and once we evolve our consciousness, we certainly gain access to much more than matter. This is self-evident to seekers because they find. The more they find, the more subtleness they imbibe or they partake in. So, Brahmā and Sarasvati, they co-create the seven seers, the Saptarishis, the seven seers of ancient India, noble and wise to be entrusted with all divine knowledge. What a really fascinating creation, because part and parcel, the stories we tell indicate what we value. And part and parcel of setting creation in motion is the production and preservation of divine knowledge. The idea that divine knowledge is not only part of the cosmos itself, but its propagation is crucial. Right? So it is a really powerful idea. Yes. So the seven seers were created, to whom would be entrusted divine revelation for the welfare of humanity. Yes. So Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, she represents artistry. She represents eloquence. Often the patron deity of music, of the arts. She is herself a muse-like figure. Right? She represents subtleness of consciousness, whereby both artistry and spirituality can be discerned. Yes. A crude consciousness can't quite discern such things. Yes. So she schools the seers about the primacy and power of sound. Her lesson is along the lines of, hey, sound is the most subtle and most sacred of the five elements, ye seers. Most dense is earth, of which is born your sense of smell. No particles, no smell, yes? Less dense is water, the medium of taste. What happens in a desert? What happens to your mouth and your capacity to taste? More subtle still is fire, which ignites your sight. No light, no sight. And subtler still is air, which repels the sense of touch. You could feel pressure underwater and temperature, but not quite touch proper functions of the air element. But sound is the most subtle of all, dwelling in the ether element, Yakasha, space. So don't mistake the sound you hear through the air as the totality of all sound. You will have to use your subtle sense, your sixth sense, perhaps, to hear ethereal transmission. The seers were in awe as Sarasvati taught them how to tune into subtle vibrations. She guided and inspired them to channel the sacred sounds innate to the cosmos. This is a really fascinating idea that sound, shabda, that there are sounds that are innate to to the cosmos, and that the divine revelation, the Vedic revelation, is actually a human channeling of sacred sound that is apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means unauthored. That, of course, is human agency involved in the channeling and the recitation and the dissemination and the transmission, but this is that which was heard. It's Shruti. This is revelation. This was received, it was heard, as opposed to, for example, the epics, the Puranas, which is considered Smriti, that which was remembered and therefore Paurushaya of human authorship. Whether that human being is a semi-divine being such as Vyasa or whomever, a playwright. Nevertheless, it's considered much more crafted, even divinely inspired, but crafted through human agency, versus the idea of the Vedas not really being crafted, but somehow channeled. This is a really fascinating idea. Okay. So Saraswati is schooling the seers to access that transmission, to tune in to these subtle sounds that comprise the cosmos. Right? So she guided and inspired them to channel the sacred sounds and nature of the cosmos. Day in and day out, they received sacred revelations, which they coded in Sanskrit, the Deva Bhasha, at least in the Indic context, the language of the gods. You must memorize the sounds you hear, school Saraswati. For in memory alone will these sacred sounds be embodied and live through you. Writing can exist upon a shelf disembodied, but knowledge memorized cannot be disembodied. Right? From memory can a verse be uttered aloud, indeed intoned. Writing will not do for the divine word. It is the residue of the embodied experience. The text is on the tongue, school Saraswati. Inscribe these sacred cosmic sounds within your hearts and minds. Let them purify and nourish you as they will for all who incant them. The seers learned well from Saraswati and codified and preserved her wisdom in the form of the Vedic revelations. They set up student-teacher lineages through which just learning the grace of Saraswati flows to this very day. Saraswati is inspiration itself. Right? This is a principle. However we wish to think about this, a deity, quote unquote, an archetype, an energy, a principle, an aspect of experience, you think of it as you will. Okay. But Saraswati represents or embodies inspiration itself. And inspiration is required for deep learning and artistry or profundity or excellence. Indeed, the best of things are inspired. When they are inspired, they take on a hue not entirely of the mundane. We've all had sublime experiences through art. Indeed, so I hope. Right. So she's summoned by poets to serve as their muse and all who engage in study. She's the patron goddess of knowledge, of wisdom, fine arts. Because of her connection with the sacredness of sound, she's especially connected with musical enterprise. In fact, when you're looking even at her visual representation or her iconography, she is most often depicted with two of her forearms holding an ancient Indic stringed instrument called a veena. Yes. She represents subtleness, sattva, the purity of mind required to receive inspiration. Lest you prepare the ground, how can inspiration strike? And if it strikes, how do you perceive it? Can you perceive it? In a certain sense, the sun is always shining, but on the cloudy days, the clouds simply block the light. But it's not that the sun does not shine, it is that you're not able to receive the light of the sun in the same way. Yes. So if we can learn to a light to the space beyond the clouds, if you will, in our minds, we'll always be able to access the light of inspiration, perpetually abiding there. Inspiration is always there. It's just a question of accessing it, of receiving it. And for this, the mud of our minds needs to be sufficiently purified, pacified, refined. Saraswati is sattva, right? Of the three gunas, the three modes of creation. She is sattva, the mode of goodness, lightness, clarity. Sattva is required to see straight, particularly to see what is subtle. Those who are able to perceive the spirit of the law have great sattva, and those who do not, they typically either they are black and white thinkers or they cannot really discern the spirit of the law. To discern the spirit of the law over the letter of the law, one has to have a certain connection to spirit itself. And this requires a subtleness of consciousness. Yes, it's very useful, especially for studying Shastra, scripture. Okay. The color associated with Saraswati, as you can guess, is white. Right. Many of the Hindu deities, they have a vehicle, a vahana, and the vahana, the vehicle, encodes a great deal of insight pertaining to the deity. What does a swan represent? Right. It's a light white bird that gracefully glides atop the surface of water. Right. This is a hamsa. Okay. There is a great deal of intrigue around this word. It may well more refer to goose, although in Saraswati's iconography, you will always see a swan. There's a reason for that. Okay. They're fabled. The swans are fabled to possess the ability to separate milk from water with their very mouths when they're mixed together. What is this? This is the ability to discern on a very high octave, separate the wheat from the chaff. This is so crucial in our times, especially with loads of disinformation and misinformation and fake news and propaganda and manipulation. Do you have the subtleness to discern? To discern, can you sense when the waters are muddy or someone's selling you some mud pretending it's chocolate mousse, right? She represents a highly refined consciousness that's capable of supreme discernment. This is the function of the intellect, of the buddhi, the intellectual faculties. Ultimate function is discerning the real from the unreal. Okay. The word hamsa is interesting because, Paramahamsa is a great person, but not like a Mahapurusha, a Paramapurusha, a Paramahamsa is a big old swan. It's a great goose. Well, what does that mean? Right? It's an individual who has great spiritual attainment. Perhaps he too rides the swan of Saraswati. Right? This honorific title of Paramahamsa, it connotes a highly refined consciousness, right? We can think of them as embodiments of Saraswati. We can think of them as in touch with the principle, the deity, the energy, the faculty of discernment that we call Saraswati, right? There's an even more esoteric dimension, at least in tantric thought, tantric teachings, with the word hamsa. There's a beautiful meditation at the beginning of the Guru Gita, the sort of song to the Guru. And it starts with this. You look at the beginning and the end of a verse of a film, of a list, and it's very, very important. Hamsa Biham. Right? Anyhow, this gorgeous meditation in the Guru Gita talks about the emanation of creation. Right? And the esoteric dimension of Hamsa is situated in subtle anatomy, not your gross body, your subtle body. There's a subtle dimension of creation. There's a subtle dimension to human beings. When illness results from outside, a disease, an injury, or have directly to do with a malfunction in the physical body, modern medicine is brilliant at that. Let's put a stent in someone's heart. Fantastic. When illnesses pertain to toxic emotionality, they're more mysterious and they're difficult to cure. And once they're treated, they often return. Okay, so we have a subtle dimension to our reality, not just our gross body. Yes. So in that subtle reality, the ancients consider there to be three channels, two channels, one channel on each side of the body. Okay, channels that carry energy through the pranic body. Okay, the energy body. There's a masculine right channel, a feminine left channel in everyone, whether they're male or female or neither. Um, and these channels begin at the base of the spine. They wave up. They meet at the heart. They again meet at the third eye. So goes tantric thought. When the energy fully reaches the third eye, this is, I suppose, this is what, the sixth chakra. Then that is one who's considered awake. Their mind's eye is fully awake. The masculine solar channel is related to the sound hum. It's a masculine sound. And the feminine lunar channel is related to the word sa, sa, sa. So this is sort of a tantric teaching regarding that word or ideation upon that word as relates to these two channels, which ultimately input into the third eye, which corresponds to awakening or acquiring the state of being a Paramahamsa. Right? All by the grace of Sarasvati. So here are some teachings about Sarasvati, whose mythology can be elusive, because she herself is an elusive principle, scarcely discernible to many. So refine your awareness, tune in, and see what you can hear by the power of subtle sound, by the grace of Sarasvati. Take good care of yourselves until next time, and reach out if I may be of service. Come study with me online, IndianWisdomSchool.com. Okay, bye for now. Namaste.